Hello friends, as you are all aware of that the government is aggressively making the economic reforms to safeguard the MSME sector in India, and one of the reform is the pre-packaged insolvency resolution process. In our last video we talked about the pre-packaged insolvency resolution process in detail, which has came in through chapter 3A of IBC code. So in this video we will talk about the regulations made there under and the rule framed by the central government. So let us start, friends. Friends, we have IBBI Pre-Pack Insolvency Resolution Process Regulations 2021 framed by IBBI, and IBBI have been conferred with power under these sections to frame these regulations. So chapter 3A is a newly constituted chapter of IBC, and these sections have been amended to confer power on IBBI to frame the regulations. So chapter 1 of the regulation is preliminary, where we have covered the definitions. It talks about these regulations will come into force on the date of publication in the official gazette, and it has been published on 9th of April 2021. Definitions and applicant. Here applicant is a corporate applicant, because unlike CIRP we cannot file an application cannot be filed by corporate debtor along with the financial creditor or operational creditor. In this case only a corporate applicant can file an application for pre-pack insolvency resolution process. Class of creditor is at least 10 financial creditor, then it will be treated as a class of creditor. Code is Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Committee of creditor, friends, we all know that committee of creditor will be of financial creditors. In case financial creditors are not there, then in this case operational creditor, 10th largest operational creditor, and one representative from employee and one from workman. So unlike CIRP wherein we have 18 largest operational creditor, here we have only 10th largest operational creditor. Electronic form, that is covered under the Information Technology Act. Electronic means you all know, understand what is electronic. Fair value means the estimated realizable value of the corporate debtor if the assets were to be exchanged on the pre-packed insolvency commencement date between. So fair value, you have to understand fair value. What is fair value? If you do not know fair value, watch my other videos. So it should be between a willing buyer and a willing seller in an arm's length transaction after the proper marketing, where the parties are acted knowledgeably, prudently, and without any compulsion. So there should not be any coercion when you are dealing with determining the fair value or dealing with any party. Form is the form specified. We will talk about that. P1 P series form have been started in this. Identification number for company and for LLP. IPE is the firm or company of insolvency professional which is registered with the board. Liquidation value, if it were to be liquidated. So assets, value of the assets, assuming that the company assets were to be liquidated. Participant, whosoever attend the meeting, whosoever authorized to attend the meeting will be participant. So why it is not committee members? Because participant may be any other person other than the committee members. In case a resolution applicant comes in, so he will be treated as a participant for the COC meeting. So process is the pre-pack insolvency resolution process. Registered valuer is a person who is registered under the company registered valuer and valuation rules. Section 247 of Companies Act says so. So registered valuer is a valuer registered with the board. Schedule means schedule to this regulation. Sections of the code. Video conferencing by video or audio means unless the context other. So most of the terms, if not defined under these regulations, will be automatically taken from the code. Moving further, friends, towards chapter 2, which talk about general items. So meeting and communication can be either in physical or electronic forms, and all the communication shall be in electronic means. That means mail, if you are sending, so that will be electronic. You cannot send a letter inviting the participants, the committee members for the meeting. So it should be through electronic means. Essential supplies shall be electricity, water, telecommunication, information technology. So this is the explanation is same as there in the CIRP regulation. So water supply to a corporate debtor will be essential. supply for drinking and sanitation purpose and not for generating of hydroelectricity. Suppose for example a hydroelectricity generating company is into these CIRP or pre-pack insolvency. So the water in case of hydroelectricity company will not be a essential supply. So water for drinking or sanitation, that will be only a essential supply. Extortionate transaction, which we have already discussed in the past also, transaction shall be considered extortionate if it requires the corporate debtor to make an exorbitant payment. For example, in general 12% rate of interest is charged and corporate debtor has agreed with somebody to give 28% or 40% rate of interest. So that is extortionate credit transaction. So that is unconscionable under the principle of law relating to contracts. Then moving further, regulation 6 says pre-pack insolvency resolution process cost. So fees payable to the authorized representative 1 who would be acting for a class of creditor, out of pocket expense of authorized representative or cost directly relating to the process approved by the committee. So if something has been spent by the resolution professional, so that will be part of the PPIRP cost. However, that has to be approved by the committee of creditor. Then friends, chapter 3 talks about resolution professional and regulation 7 talks about the eligibility subject to a consent in form P1. What is form P1? P1 is the consent form wherein RP is required to file his consent to the corporate debtor. Then only corporate debtor can approach to NCLT and file an application. So IP shall be eligible to be appointed as an RP or IRP if he and all his partner or director of IPE. Now what is IPE? If you do not know, IPE is an insolvency professional entity, that is a firm or a company of IPs of which he is a partner or independent. That means all the partners or director of the IPE shall also be independent of CD. What is independent mean? Now it has been explained. A person shall be considered independent if he is eligible to be appointed as an independent director. If he is eligible to be appointed as an independent director, or he is not a related party, or not an employee, proprietor or partner of a firm of auditor, secretarial auditor, cost auditor, or a legal or consulting firm which draw 5% revenue from the CD. More than 5% revenue from the CD in the preceding 3 financial years. Now, independent person will be, he should not be a related party, he should be eligible to be appointed as an independent director. He is not an employee, proprietor or partner in any audit firm. Suppose Mr. A is a partner with ABC and ABC is a firm who does the audit of CD. Now Mr. A wanted to be appointed as a IP RP of CD. He cannot be because this firm wherein Mr. A is a partner is doing the audit for this CD, and there should be a time lag which it says that 3 financial years should have been passed after this thing has happened. Or in case suppose this ABC is a consulting firm, they are not auditor, so if they draw more than 5% of the revenue, from CD, then also they are ineligible. If less than 5%, then Mr. A can be a RP for this particular CD. Then friends, clause 2 says RP who is a director or a partner of IPE shall be ineligible. Now he will become ineligible if any of the partner of IPE represent any stakeholder in the process. So suppose Mr. A is a partner in ABC and now ABC is IPE. IPE is a firm or a company registered with IBBI for solely for the insolvency purposes. So if any other partner, suppose B is involved anywhere in CD. With CD, he is supporting the CD for filing application, or maybe preparing the resolution plan, or any way he is related with CD. So Mr. A now cannot become the RP for this CD. Then friends, we have regulation 8, which says fees for the RP. In case corporate debtor fails to file an application, or its application is rejected, fees payable shall be borne by the corporate debtor, and the corporate debtor shall maintain a separate bank account which shall be operated by the RP for meeting the fees and other expenses incurred by him during the process. Access to books account. Now RP may access the books of accounts, record, or other documents to the extent relevant for performing his duty. So he can approach to the members, promoter, directors, or partners of the corporate debtor. He can participate in the meeting. He can advise the professional engaged. He can visit the depository of security. He can approach to the registrar for the records of ownership, contractual counterparties, and seek information from them. Then regulation 10 talks about appointment of professional, which says RP may appoint professional. So RP, as authorized under section 54F subsection 3 clause E, he can appoint the professionals, provided that the following professionals shall not be appointed. Who shall not be appointed now? A person who is not registered with the regulator of the profession concerned. That means in case CA, he can appoint. Yes. CS, he can appoint. Forensic auditors, yes, he can appoint. That person should be registered with the regulator. In case of the forensic auditors who are FAFD certified or CFE certified, he can only appoint those forensic auditors. A related party of the corporate debtor, he cannot appoint. The auditor of the corporate debtor during the 5 preceding years. So if someone is an auditor of corporate debtor during the preceding 5 years, he cannot be appointed as a professional under these regulations by the RP. Then he cannot appoint a partner or director of IPE. His own IPE, he cannot, if he is appointed as an RP, he cannot appoint his partners as a professional in the CD. A relative of RP. So that means he cannot appoint a relative, his relative, and he cannot appoint a relative of partner or director of IPE. He cannot even appoint the relative of his partner. Then moving further friends, regulation 11 talks about disclosure of cost. So RP shall make disclosure at the time of appointment and thereafter in accordance with the regulations and in accordance with the code. Shall disclose the item wise process cost, so that whatever has been incurred he has to disclose. He has to file the miscellaneous returns. There are monthly and half yearly annual returns with the IPA and IBBI. So he will have to disclose everything there. Then preservation of records as per the policy. So record retention policy of IBBI, he has to preserve the records in an electronic form. Filing of report and form. So again there are number of forms he has to file with IBBI and the insolvency professional agencies. Now moving further friends with chapter 4, initiation of process. Regulation 14 talks about the approval from financial creditor. As we have discussed in the code, so financial creditor approval is required before filing an application by the corporate applicant. Corporate debtor has to approach to the financial creditor, convene a meeting, and then get the approval of the financial creditor with 66% majority. Now applicant shall convene the meeting of financial creditor who are not the related party. So he has to make sure that in the meeting no related party is there, and in the meeting of the financial creditor they have to propose the name of RP also. So the meeting notice shall be served at least 5 days before, unless a shorter time is agreed by all the participants, all the financial creditor. And the notice of the meeting shall include date, time and venue, and enclose a list of creditor along with the amount due to them in form P2. Now form P2 is the form wherein there is a list of all the creditor, whether that creditor is operational creditor or financial creditor, whether that creditor is secured or unsecured, the amount due to them, so the details of all the creditors. So we will see the form 2 also. Form 2 is available at the end of these regulations, so we will look at the form, all these forms also. Now this form 2 has the details of all the creditor. Earlier in the CIRP process, what RP has to do, he has to collate all the claims and prepare this. So what CD must have done, CD must have collated all the claims by itself and prepared this form P2, and he will pass on this to RP. So RP job will be almost done for this collation. He just have to confirm whether something is not, some claims are not left. So what will happen next? Now the financial creditor who are not the related party of the corporate debtor, having not less than 10% of the value of the total claims, can propose the name of the IP. So first of all, RP is not there in the picture. First of all, the corporate applicant, the corporate debtor will determine the list of financial creditor, and he will prepare the list of creditor, convene a meeting, and then in the meeting of the financial creditor, the financial creditor having not less than 10%, so 10 more than 10%, financial creditor can propose the name of the IP who will act as an RP. So it is not necessary that that person will become the RP, because this is just a proposal. So 10%, different 10% financial creditor may propose another name. So in their meeting they will decide which insolvency professional to be appointed. So all the financial creditor sit in the meeting, and with a majority of 66% vote share will decide the appointment of RP. The approval of terms of appointment of RP under this section 54A shall be in form P3. Now form P3 is there. Form P3 is the appointment letter of RP, wherein all the terms and conditions of appointment of RP is mentioned. Then the terms of appointment of RP under these regulations shall include the fees payable to him. So in his appointment letter, obviously, as you get, if you are working somewhere, you get an appointment letter with your compensation. The cost to company is there in the appointment letter. Similarly, once he get appointed, he will, in his appointment letter, will be able to see the fees payable to him for performing his duty. Fees payable to him and expense to be incurred by him. So whatever, in case he incurs something, that will be paid by the after the approval of committee of creditor, that will be paid to him. Fees payable to him and expense to be incurred by him in case management of a corporate debtor is vested. So section 54J talked about passing on the control to the RP in case the CD has done some fraudulent activity. So in that case, if court has ordered passing on the control to the RP, so whatever in that circumstances, so whatever expense he has incurred or whatever fees he would be charging in that case, so that has to be decided upfront in his appointment letter. Clause 7 talks about approval of filing of application under this shall be in form P4. So approval of filing of application. So form P4 is the approval by the financial creditor. Financial creditor in their meeting will approve that the CD can go ahead and file an application with the NCLT, with the adjudicating authority. So this form will be the approval wherein financial creditor has approved that they can proceed and file an application with adjudicating authority. Now, where the corporate debtor has no financial debt and where all the financial creditor are related party. So there can be circumstances where the financial creditors are related party or they may not have any financial debt. So then the applicant shall convene a meeting of operational creditor. Now, so this has to be, who will determine that? That has to be determined by the corporate debtor itself, whether they have the financial creditor. If they have the financial creditor, whether they are not related party. If they are related party, then they will have to convene a meeting of operational creditor who are not related party to the corporate debtor, and provision of sub-regulation 1 to 7 shall mutatis mutandis apply. So above provision shall apply, and 18th instead of 18th, here 10th largest operational creditor will constitute the committee of creditors. So it will come in the coming regulations. Then regulation 15 talks about choice of authorized representative on examination of form P2. Now form P2 is the form wherein we have the list of all the creditors, financial and operational both. The RP shall, RP is appointed and RP must have the list. Now because the meeting of financial creditor or operational creditor have been convened and he has been appointed as an RP of the process. Now RP shall, looking at the form P2, ascertain whether the creditors form a class or not. For representation of creditor in a class as certain under sub-regulation in the committee, identify 3 insolvency professional. So if he identify that the above are class of creditors, in case debt is there, so in that case they cannot appoint all the debenture holders, so he has to appoint the representative of that particular class wherein there are more than 10 financial creditor in that particular category. And those 3 insolvency professional whose names are proposed by the RP must not be the relative or related party of the applicant or the resolution professional, having their address as registered by the board in the state or union territory with the highest number of creditors. So suppose a CD has a creditor in Maharashtra. So in Maharashtra, if a CD has creditor, he has to appoint authorized representative from the Maharashtra state. He cannot appoint somebody from Gujarat or Karnataka. So if the most of the creditors are residing in that particular state, he has to look for the authorized representative from that state only. Provided that where the state or union territory does not have adequate number of insolvency professionals. Now in case of Daman and Diu or Lakshadweep, there is no insolvency professional and the CD creditors are based out of Lakshadweep, so he can in that case look for some close territory nearby state for the appointment of the RP. Then eligible to be appointed under regulation 7, so he should be eligible, willing to act as an authorized representative. So consent as in the form is also provided by the authorized representative. So obtain the consent of IP identified to act as an authorized representative in form P5. Now form P5 is the consent of the insolvency professional who is willing to act as an authorized representative for class of creditor. Now the RP should have to seek from the creditors in the class to choose the insolvency professional out of these 3. So maximum vote insolvency professional will be appointed as an authorized representative, provided that the creditor shall communicate their choice to the RP within 3 days. So within 3 days, RP will get the intimation from the creditors that they have chosen this particular RP. Select the insolvency professional who is the choice of highest number of creditors. Now the highest number of creditors choose particular RPs. Now suppose for example A, B and C, these are IPs, and insolvency professional who is acting as an RP of CD has appointed these 3, and in its advertisement he has given the name of these 3 insolvency professional, and A gets 50% vote from the class of creditors, he get 30% and C get 20%. Now this person A will be appointed as the insolvency professional for the class of creditor because he got the highest number of vote of the creditors from the class. And inform the name of insolvency professional selected under subregulation 5 along with his consent form. Consent he has given in the form 5, and he will inform this thing to the applicant, to the corporate debtor. So this job has to be done by the insolvency professional who is acting as an RP of the CD. So RP, what does RP do after his appointment? He will, based upon the list of creditor in form P2, he will identify if there is a requirement for appointment of authorized representative or not. In case there is a requirement, if we see that there is a requirement, then he will look for 3 insolvency professional and he will seek from the class of creditor that out of these 3, which insolvency professional would you like to have as your authorized representative. In case of the highest number of creditors, the choice of highest number of creditor will be the authorized, will automatically become the authorized representative of that particular class. And he, after that, he will inform, who will inform? The RP of the CD will inform to the CD that this person is appointed as an authorized representative of this class of creditor. Regulation 16 talks about the declaration. So declaration under clause F subsection 2 of section 54. This declaration in form P6. So first declaration is in form P6, which is to be given by the director of the corporate debtor or a partners in case of LLP, that they should comply with the provision of the code and they should complete the regulation within 90 days. So 90 days is the time limit for completion of this process, so they will have to declare. And in form P7 they have to declare that there is no fraudulent transaction, it is not, the process is not been initiated to defraud the creditors. So in form P7, partners or the directors of the CD will declare that they are not doing this process to defraud the creditors. Regulation 17 talks about the report by RP. RP shall also prepare a report in form P8. In form P8, he will declare that the provision of the codes are met in compliance with section 54A, and the base resolution plan which has been prepared by the CD is as per the provision of the code. Information to be furnished by applicant, regulation 18. For the purpose of section 54 subsection 3 clause D, applicant shall furnish audited financial statement, provisional financial statement for the current financial year up to the date of declaration, and form P5. Form P5 was the authorized representative consent form. So form P5 submitted by the authorized representative under regulation 15. Then friends, moving further with chapter 5. Chapter 5 talks about public announcement and claim. Regulation 19 talks about public announcement. RP now has to make a public announcement within 2 days. Earlier in the CIRP process, it was 3 days, now reduced to 2 days. Within 2 days, he has to make the public announcement of the commencement of the process, that the process has been commenced. The public announcement shall be in form P9. Now the public announcement form is P9 and it is sent to every creditor listed in form P2. P2 we have the list of creditor prepared by the corporate debtor itself. So in form P2 we have got the list of creditor and he will send every creditor the intimation about the commencement of this process. He will send to all the information utility published on the website of the corporate debtor and the board. Now regulation 20 talks about list of claims. Corporate debtor shall submit the list of claim to the RP. So RP will get the list of claims. Now earlier in case of CIRP, it is the responsibility of the RP to collect and collate all the claims, and in this case claims collation will be done by the CD itself. So CD in form P2 will have all the list of creditors and they will collate that, and in form P10 they will submit the list of claims to the RP. Based on the records of the corporate debtor and the relevant material available on record, the RP shall confirm the details. So now RP is required to confirm the details received. So what he will do, he will confirm the records available in form P10, all the claims with the claimants, that their claims are true and correct. The RP shall inform every creditor regarding the claims as confirmed by him and seek objection if any. Creditor may submit objection along with the supporting documents. So in case creditors do not agree with the claims given by the corporate debtor, they can counter that claims, and creditor they can file an objection to the RP within 7 days. 7 days from the receipt of communication. So what RP will do, RP will get the list of claims from the CD. He will look at that and he will send an intimation to all the creditors seeking their confirmation on those claims. So in this case, if the creditors do not agree, they can object and provide the supporting documents within 7 days from the date of communication by RP. Now RP may call for such other evidence. So if now he has to determine whether whose claim is correct, whether the CD claim is correct or whether the creditor claim is correct. So he will have to determine based upon the evidence or clarification he seek from the creditor or the corporate debtor. So he will have to determine that. Now RP shall consider every objection received and modify the claim of the creditor if required. So the RP has been given the liberty to modify the claim based upon the supporting documents received by the creditors. Creditor shall update its claim as and when the claim is satisfied partly or fully from any source in any manner after the pre-pack insolvency commencement date. So now after the settlement, creditor will update its claim. In case some payment has been made or some event has happened, some settlement has been done, so creditor will have to update its claim. The RP shall maintain list of claims in form P10. So now we have got form P10 from the initially filled in by the corporate debtor, and RP will update the form P10 based upon the subsequent information or subsequent confirmation or evidence clarification received from the corporate debtor. Form P10 shall be available for inspection by the creditors, members, partners, directors, guarantors. Anybody can view the form P10 and is also displayed on the website of the corporate debtor, filed with the board, presented at the meeting of the committee. So it will be presented at the meeting of the committee. So it will be a public document, will be uploaded on the website of the corporate debtor. Then regulation 21 talks about determination of amount of claim, where the amount of claim of creditor is not precise. Now the amount cannot be determined due to some contingency or other reason. The RP shall make the best estimate, and in case he is not able to make the best estimate, then he can later on update as and when he get the updated information, and maybe after a week or as and when he get. So he can continue the process with the claims available or with the amount available. In case he cannot determine amount, he will not have to wait. He will have to continue with the process with the amount available with the best estimate. Now debt in foreign currency, the claims denominated in foreign currency shall be valued in Indian currency at the official exchange rate as on the date of commencement of pre-pack insolvency. And official exchange rate is the rate published by RBI. Transfer of debt to creditors, where the creditor assign or transfer the debt to such creditor, he will have to inform, rather both the party will have to inform the terms of such assignment or transfer to the RP. Then friends, chapter 6 talks about committee of creditor. Regulation 24, committee with only class in the creditor, where the corporate debtor has only class in the creditor, no financial creditor who are not related party of the corporate director, the committee shall comprise of authorized representative. If there are only debenture or only class of creditor, then the committee will be of authorized representative. Committee with only operational creditor, where the corporate debtor has no financial creditor or all the financial creditor are related party, in that case 10th largest. Here it is 10th largest. In CIRP it is 18th largest. So largest operational creditor by value, or one representative elected by workman, one representative elected by employee, shall be the committee of creditor. A member of the committee formed under this regulation shall have the voting rights in proportion of the debt due. What will be the debt due? Total debt will be the due of all the operational creditor, aggregate debt of the workman, and aggregate debt of the employee. This will be total debt, and in proportion of the debt due, they will have the voting right. The committee formed shall have the same right, power, duties. So under this regulations, if the committee is formed of all the operational creditors, 10th largest plus workman plus employee, so the person will constitute the committee of creditor, and this committee will have all the powers, duty, obligation as the committee of financial creditor would have. We have discussed that the claims will be updated as and when received. So maybe subsequently some claimant come or provide some additional details, their claims may get updated, so there may be change in the constitution of committee. So subsequent change in the constitution of committee may not affect the decision already taken by the committee, or in case of there is change in the committee, that shall be communicated to the committee members within 2 days of such change. Then friends, chapter 7, meeting of the committee. Meeting of the committee, RP may convene the meeting of the committee as and when considered necessary. So he will have to convene the meeting, and the committee can be requested by the member with 33% of the vote share. Here it is 33% of the committee members can approach to the RP, and they can request him to convene a meeting. Notice of the meeting. A meeting shall be convened by giving not less than 3 days notice. 3 days notice in writing to every participant at the address provided to the resolution professional by the creditor. The committee may reduce the notice period from 3 days to such period not less than 24 hours, as that in case of committees of authorized representative, in case committee has the authorized representative, in that case not less than 48 hours. Regulation 29 talks about service of notice. A notice may be sent to the participant in the email or in text as an attachment in the email, and the subject line should state that the corporate debtor, the place, time and the date of the meeting. Notice can be sent in a PDF format together with a link, and in case you are sending in a PDF format, so you will have to send how to download the particular software, the PDF software. He may not be well versed with the PDF, or he may not have that version of the PDF, so you will have to tell that in your email also. When a notice or a notifications of availability of notice are sent by email, the resolution professional shall ensure that it uses a system which produces the confirmation of total number of emails, so that mails do not get fail, or the recipient do not even get a transmission get failed. So he will have to record the details to all the participants to whom the meeting have been sent, who have read the meeting or opened the link. So he has to maintain a proof of sending the email. His obligation shall be satisfied when he transmit the email, and he shall not be held responsible for any failure beyond his control. Suppose I am sending an email, and in the email I have read receipt, and I am getting the message that the email has been delivered to the recipient and he has read the message. That is sufficient. And later on, even if the applicant comes up and says that I have not got your email, or you not got your intimation, so that will not prevail, that will not be considered, because you have the sufficient proof that you have transmitted the message and he has got the message. It is up to him whether the recipient open up or read the message or not. The notice made available on the URL shall be readable and the recipient should be able to obtain and retain copy. The resolution professional shall give the complete URL address at a website, full detail, how to access the documents and information, so that the recipient should not say that the attachment I've got, I was unable to open that. So in the email, in case he is sending a URL or attachment, so he should provide the process to open the attachment or a link for the software that is to be used to open the attachment. Participant failed to provide or update the email address to the RP, the non-receipt of such notice by such participant of any meeting shall not invalidate the decision of the meeting. Then friends, moving further towards regulation 30, contents of the notice. Now we have discussed how to send the send the notice of the meeting. Now we will talk about the contents of the meeting. The notice shall inform the participant of the venue, the time, date. So the notice shall have the venue, time and date of the meeting and the option available to them to participate through video conferencing or other audio visual means, and shall also provide all the necessary information to enable participant through video conferencing or audio conferencing or visual means. So the first of all, date, time and venue is important. In case video conferencing, the link, in case you are using the Zoom meeting or somebody is using the Skype or Google Meet, so you will have to tell the participant that you can download the Skype or this particular software from this link. The notice of the meeting shall provide that the participant may attend and vote in the meeting either in person or through a representative who is not a related party of the corporate debtor. So related party will not have any right to vote. Notice of the meeting shall provide that the participant may attend either himself or any authorized representative, but authorized representative shall not be the related party of the corporate debtor. But the participant has to inform the RP in advance before the meeting the identity of the representative who will attend and vote in the meeting on behalf of, and shall forward any authorization in favor of the representative. So a participant has to beforehand update the RP that on my behalf this particular person will be attending the meeting and he will be voting on my behalf. Then sub-regulation 3 says the notice of the meeting shall contain the following: the list of matters to be discussed, the list of issues to be voted upon, the copy of all the document relevant to the matter to be discussed and to be voted upon. So he will have to share the copy of the matter beforehand in the invite. The notice of the meeting shall state the process and manner of voting. Now the voting, how the voting is to be done, link for the voting, when the voting window will get open, when it will get closed. So that has to be told to the participant beforehand. State the process and the manner of voting in electronic means and time schedule, including the time period during which the votes may be cast. Provide the login ID and the details of the facility for generating password and for keeping security and casting of vote in a secured manner, so that nobody other than the participant can vote. Provide contact detail of the person who will address the queries concerned with the electronic voting. So in case my window is open, I am the participant, I am the member of COC, I am unable to vote, so whom shall I contact? So there should be a contact person who will take care of all these technological issues. So that has to be there in the notice. Now regulation 31 talks about quorum. The meeting of committee shall quorate if the member of the committee representing at least 33%. So 33% of the members are required for quorum. of the vote share are present either in person or through video conferencing or other audio-visual means, provided that the committee may modify the percentage of voting share required for quorum in respect of any future meeting. So they can decide with the majority that the subsequent meeting will have this much of quorum. Where the meeting of the committee could not be held for want of quorum unless the committee has previously decided otherwise, the meeting shall automatically stand adjourned at the same time the place on next day. In the event a meeting of the committee is adjourned in accordance with sub-regulation 2, the adjourned meeting shall quorate with the member of the committee attending the meeting. Now in the adjourned meeting there will be no requirement of quorum. Member present in the meeting will quorate the meeting. Regulation 32 talks about participation through video conferencing. The notice convening the meeting of the committee shall provide the participant option to attend the meeting through video conferencing or other audio visual means. RP shall make the necessary arrangement to ensure uninterrupted and clear video audio. RP shall take due care and due and reasonable care to safeguard the integrity of the meeting so that no intruder can enter the meeting. To ensure availability of proper video conferencing and the audio visual equipment, facilities, etc. To record the proceedings and prepare the minutes of the meeting, to store and safeguard the recordings and all. To ensure that no person other than the intended participant attend or has access to the proceedings, provided that the person who are differently able, now there may be a person who are differently able, may make a request to RP to allow a person to accompany them in the meeting. Where a meeting is conducted through video conferencing or audio visual means, the scheduled venue of the meeting as set forth in the notice convening the meeting shall be in India. Now if somebody is outside India, so it will be deemed that as if that person has attended the meeting in India. Shall deem to be the place of said meeting, and all recording of the proceeding at the meeting shall be deemed to be made in such place. So if participants are attending it from different countries, it will be deemed that the meeting has been happened in India. Conduct of meeting, the resolution professional shall act as the chairperson. So RP will be the chairperson of the meeting. At the commencement of the meeting, RP will do a roll call. He will ensure that the participants are present in the meeting. Will do a roll call. He will ask the name of the participant, in which capacity the participant attending, whether he is representing a member or group of members, the location from where the he is participating. He has received the agenda and all the relevant information, and no other person other than him is attending. After the roll call, the RP shall inform the participant of the name of the person who are present for the meeting and confirm if the required quorum is completed. RP shall ensure that the required quorum is present throughout the meeting. From the commencement of the meeting till its conclusion, no person other than the participant or any person whose presence is required by the RP shall be allowed to access to the place where meeting is held or the video conferencing or other facility. Now RP has to ensure that only the person who are authorized to attend the meeting are there in the meeting, and no other person have any access to the place where the meeting, even before or after the meeting. RP shall ensure that the minutes are made in relation to each meeting of the committee, and such minutes shall disclose the particulars of the participants who attended the meeting through video conferencing and other means, etc. Now regulation 34 talks about committee with the creditors in a class. RP shall provide the list of creditors in a class to the respective authorized representative within 3 days of the commencement of the process. RP shall provide an updated list of creditors in each class to the authorized representative. The authorized representative shall have no role in the receipt or confirmation of claims of the creditor. He will just act as a representative of the class of creditor. The RP shall provide electronic means of communication between the authorized representative and the creditor. Now, RP will not participate in the meeting of class of creditor, rather the authorized representative, this authorized representative will talk to the creditors, and the mode will be provided by the RP of the CD. The vote share of the CD in a class shall be in proportion to the financial debt, which includes an interest at the rate of 8% unless the higher rate has been agreed. The authorized representative of creditors shall be entitled to receive a fee, which shall be in case 10 to 100, 15,000 for each meeting, 100 to 1,000, 20,000 per meeting, more than 1,000, 25,000 per meeting. This will be the remuneration of authorized representative. The authorized representative shall circulate the agenda to creditors. He must have got the agenda from the RP. He will circulate to the creditors so that they may give their preliminary views on the agenda items, and he will seek the voting, and the voting window will remain open at least 12 hours, for at least 12 hours, so that they may submit their preliminary views, and it should open at least 24 hours after the authorized representative seek the preliminary views, provided further that such preliminary view shall not be considered as the voting instructions. So that will be just a preliminary view of the class of creditor, that will not be considered as the voting instructions. Now regulation 35 talks about voting by committee. Any action requiring approval of the committee shall be considered in the meeting of the committee. So where the approval of committee is required, so that has to be through the voting. RP shall take a vote of member of the committee present in the meeting of any item listed for voting and discussion on the same. So any item listed on the agenda, he may start the discussion on the same, and he may seek vote from the committee members. At the conclusion of the vote at the meeting, the RP shall announce the decision taken by the members present in the meeting on the items, along with the name of the members of the committee who voted for or against the decision or abstained from voting. So members voted in favor of, against, or did not vote. So he will maintain a list. RP shall circulate the minutes of the meeting by electronic means to all the members of the committee and authorized representative within 24 hours of the conclusion of the meeting. So minutes of the meeting will be circulated to all the members of the committee, whether present or not. Seek a vote of the members who did not vote at the meeting on the matter listed. So he will, after the meeting is concluded, he will seek a vote from the members who have not voted, where the voting shall be kept open for at least 24 hours from the circulation of minutes. So after circulation of minutes, he will seek the vote from the members who have not voted, and the 24 hours the window will remain open. The authorized representative shall circulate the minute of the meeting received under subregulation 4 to the creditor in a class and announce the voting window at least 24 hours before the window opens for the voting instruction, and keep the window open for at least 12 hours. So he will announce at least 24 hours that you are going to vote, and the voting window will remain open for at least 12 hours. Regulation 36 talk about the voting by authorized representative, where authorized representative are there, so they shall cast their vote in respect of each financial creditor, and on behalf of financial creditor they represent. So maybe they may be acting on behalf of a particular financial creditor, or in case of a class of creditor, they may be acting on behalf of multiple financial creditor. So they must get an instruction from the financial creditors, then only they will be able to cast the vote. So they will have to act as per the instructions of the financial creditor. In case they are representing class of creditor, if more than 50% of the class of creditors agree, then only he will be able to vote, otherwise he should abstain from voting. So for a matter, if more than 50% agree, in a class of creditor, then only authorized representative should vote in favor or against, as the case may be. Otherwise, he should abstain from voting. So this has been clearly defined under subsection 3 of section 25A. Now regulation 37 talks about voting through electronic means. The RP shall provide each member of the committee the means to exercise its vote either by electronic means or through electronic voting system. So electronic voting system shall be the voting by electronic means or by a secured system wherein the electronic ballots are there and votes cast by the members who polled in favor or against, such that the voting exercised by way of electronic means get registered and counted in the electronic registry in a centralized server. So this should be a platform he has to obtain, RP has to obtain from the service provider, so that the voting shall be conducted in a secured and a safe manner, and all the records are to be maintained. The expression secured system means computer, hardware, software, procedure that are reasonably secure from unauthorized access, provide a reasonable level of reliability, are reasonably suited to platform the intended function, and adhere to generally accepted security procedure. At the end of the voting period, the voting portal shall be blocked. So once the time is over, the voting window will get blocked. At the conclusion of the vote held under the regulation, the resolution professional shall announce and make a written record of the summary of decision taken on a relevant agenda item along with the names of the member of the committee who voted for or against the decision or abstained from voting. So a list will be prepared for all the members who voted in favor, against, or who has abstained from voting. The resolution professional shall circulate the copy of record made under this regulation, this record, to all the participants by electronic means within 24 hours of the conclusion of the voting. Now moving further, chapter 8, valuation and information memorandum. Regulation 38 talks about appointment of registered valuer. RP shall within 3 days of his appointment appoint 2 registered valuer to determine the fair value and liquidation value of the corporate debtor. And following person shall not be appointed as a registered valuer: related party of the corporate debtor, auditor of the corporate debtor any time preceding 5 years. Earlier, in case of appointment of IP, it was 3 years if he is a auditor of the corporate debtor. Now for the appointment of registered valuer, 5 years cooling period is there. Partner or director of IPE cannot be appointed as a registered valuer. Suppose I am an IP and I am acting as an RP of a particular process. So my partner, if I am a partner with IPE, so any of my partner in IPE cannot become a registered valuer. Relative of the resolution professional. So RP's relative can also not be a registered valuer, or relative of a partner or director of any of the partner or director of IPE. Regulation 39 talks about the fair value and liquidation value. So this value is to determined by the registered valuer. 2 registered valuer have been appointed by the RP. So they will prepare an estimate of future fair value and liquidation value, and they will provide that to the RP, and that has to be done with the internationally accepted valuation standards after physical verification of inventory and fixed asset of the corporate debtor. The average of the value determined by the 2 registered valuers shall be considered. Now in case of CIRP, it says that 2 registered valuer will do the valuation, and in case there is a significant difference in their valuation, so 3rd registered valuer is appointed, and the 2 closest out of 1, 2 and 3, suppose 1 and 3 value determined by 1 and 3 are the closest, so average of this is to be taken. Now in this case there is no such thing, just 2 registered valuer, and average of the 2 shall be considered as a liquidation value or the fair value. After the receipt of resolution plan in accordance with the code and these regulations, the RP shall provide the fair value and liquidation value to every member of the committee in electronic form on receiving an undertaking from the member that they shall maintain confidentiality of the fair value and liquidation value and shall not use such value to cause any undue gain or undue loss to itself or any other person. The RP and the registered value shall maintain the confidentiality of the fair value and the liquidation value. Now moving further to regulation 40, information memorandum. Information memorandum is the detail of the corporate debtor which is required by the resolution applicant to infuse money in the corporate debtor, to invest in the corporate debtor. So preliminary information memorandum is to be provided by the corporate debtor in case of PPIRP. In case of CIRP process, information memorandum is to be prepared by the RP. So information memorandum shall contain the following details: the assets and liabilities with such description as are generally necessary for ascertaining their value. So details of all the assets and liability, description, date of acquisition, cost of acquisition, useful life, identification number, depreciation, book value, and all relevant other relevant details. The latest annual financial statement, audited financial statement for preceding 2 years, and the provisional financial statement for the current financial year. A list of claims containing the name of creditors, the amount of claims, and the security interest, if any, in respect of such claim. Particulars of debt due from or to the corporate debtor with respect to the related party. So all the related party debts list has to be prepared, and that has to be part of the information memorandum. Details of guarantee that have been given in relation to debt, names and address of the member or the partner holding at least 1% of the stake in the corporate debtor. So partners or members holding 1% stake. So we have to make a list of all the members or partners of the corporate debtor who hold stake of at least 1%, more than 1%. Detail of all material litigation, ongoing litigation, so details of that. Number of workmen, employees, their liabilities, or other information which corporate debtor or RP deemed relevant, which has to be included in the information memorandum. Now RP will finalize. In this case, the information memorandum is to be prepared by CD, and RP has to look at the information memorandum. He has to update the information memorandum and finalize the information memorandum, and finally he has to submit that to the members of the committee within 14 days. Within 14 days of the pre-pack insolvency commencement date, after receiving an undertaking from the member of the committee that they will not disclose this information to anybody, to maintain the confidentiality, and such information they will not cause any undue gain or undue loss to itself or anybody. A member of the committee may request the RP or the corporate debtor for further information of the nature described in the regulation, and the resolution professional or the corporate debtor shall provide such information to the member within reasonable time. So here the members of the committee can approach to RP or the corporate debtor. Earlier, in case of CIRP, they can only ask the RP because the board of director of the corporate debtor was suspended. In this case, since the corporate debtor were managing the business, so the RP or CD can be approached by the committee of creditor for seeking any additional information. Now regulation 41 talks about preferential and other transaction. Here also the RP has to make an opinion of the preferential transaction, and he has to, after making an opinion, he has to report that those undervalued, fraudulent or extortionate transaction to the adjudicating authority on or before 30th day of pre-pack insolvency commencement date. The RP shall form an opinion. So before 30th date, he has to form an opinion about the undervalued, preferential, extortionate or fraudulent transaction under these sections, where the resolution professional is of the opinion that the corporate debtor has been subject to any transactions covered under these sections. He shall make a determination on or before 45th day of the insolvency commencement date, under intimation to the board. He shall also intimate to the board. Where the RP makes a determination under subregulation 2, he shall apply to the adjudicating authority for appropriate relief. So this is application for preferential or undervalued or other transactions he has to make to the adjudicating authority. Then friends, chapter 9 talks about resolution plan. Regulation 42 talks about scoring and improvement of resolution plan. As we have discussed that there will be Swiss challenge, first opportunity will be given to the corporate debtor with the base resolution plan, and in case the CD base resolution plan is not appropriate or the committee of creditor, member of committee of creditors are not satisfied with the base resolution plan, they may ask the RP to invite the resolution plan from outside, and all those resolution plans will compete among themselves, and the best, significantly better resolution plan will get decided and will be approved by the committee of creditors. So here in the regulations, regulation 42 proposes the consideration of resolution plan. So basis of evaluation includes the parameter to be applied and the manner of applying such parameter as approved by the committee for evaluating a resolution plan, to assign a score to the plan and disclose in the invitation of resolution plan. So when the RP will invite the resolution plan, he will make an evaluation matrix based upon their meeting with the committee of creditor. They will determine based upon the industry, based upon the sector the CDs in, so they will determine some criteria, and on the basis of that criteria they will judge the resolution plans. So let us take the illustration which is there in the regulation. It says the committee may identify three parameters X, Y, Z for evaluation of resolution plan. It may apply these parameter in the form of a formula, namely 1.5 X, 2Y and 2.5 Z, where the value of X, Y, Z are 20, 25, 30 respectively. The score of the resolution plan is, in that case, will be 155. So these are the parameters they have determined, X, Y, Z, and suppose in this example we have only one plan. There may be another plan which may score 2.5 in this X and 1 in Y or 3 in Z. So this total score will be determined for all the plans, and that will be compared, and whosoever has the highest score will be approved by the committee of creditor. Let's take another example, friends. Here the committee may identify three parameters X, Y, Z, similar to what we have in the above example. For evaluation of resolution plan, it may apply these three parameters in the form of formula like this, subject to X being not less than 20. So they may fix like that also, subject to X being not less than 20, where the value of X, Y, Z are 20, 25, 30 respectively. The score of resolution plan is, so straight away if some resolution plan has a value less than 20, that will straight away get rejected. It may apply these parameter in the form of formula like 2y 2.5z subject to x being not less than 20, where the value of x, y, z this. The score of the resolution plan is 2x 2.5 y, which is 125, where the value of x, y, z are 15, 40 and 50 respectively. The resolution does not meet the minimum value of x, and hence the plan will not be evaluated. So they have fixed the minimum value of x, which is 20. If this does not mean, so we do not have to proceed and continue further. Straight away this plan will get rejected. Significantly better in relation, so in the code in chapter 3 we talked about significantly better. So in relation to a resolution plan mean that the score of the resolution plan is higher than the another plan by a certain number or a percentage as approved by the committee of creditor and disclosed in the invitation of for the resolution plan. So significantly better, suppose they say 5% is the significantly better formula, so they will have to stick with that. So and that this 5% has to be determined upfront and has to be disclosed in the resolution plan. Let us take another example here. Illustration 1 says the committee may consider a resolution plan to be significantly better than another plan if the score of the former is higher than of the later by 10 points here. It is not percentage. Where resolution plan A and B have scores of 100 and 110, B is the significantly better plan than A. Where the resolution plan A and B have the score of 100 and 108, B is not significantly better than A. So that is clear. Moving on to illustration 2, the committee may consider a resolution plan to be significantly better than another resolution plan if the score of the former is higher than that of the later by 5%. So that what we have discussed, 5% in terms of percentage, not absolute term. Where the resolution plan A and B have score of 100 and 107 respectively, B will become the significantly better because this will be 7% higher. Where the resolution plan A and B have score of 100 and 104, B is not significantly better. Tick size means the minimum improvement over another resolution plan in terms of score as approved by the committee of creditor and disclosed in the invitation. So tick size means that you have to give this much of increment to your earlier bid, that is tick size. Illustration, let's take on the basis of evaluation, resolution plan A and B have scores 105 and 108 respectively. Resolution applicant A may wish to improve A over B because A is less than and he wish to improve. It must improve A such that the score of A exceed that of B by at least this much tick size. If the tick size is 5, resolution applicant must approve A such that the score of A is at least 108 because that B has already bid for. So 5 he has to prove upon the score of B, that is 108 plus 5, 113. His earlier bid has to be 113. In the above example, if the ticket size is 5%, so again it is not in absolute 5. So if it is 5%, so such that 108 into 5%, so it will be 113.4. Regulation 43 talks about invitation of resolution plan for the purpose of section 54K subsection 5. The resolution professional shall publish brief particulars of the invitation in form P11. So there is another form now, P11, in which he publish the particulars of invitation of resolution plan not later than 21 days from the pre-pack. Within 21 days he has to publish form P11 for invitation of resolution plan. Resolution professional shall publish form 11 on the website of the CD, on the website of designated by the board, in any manner as may be decided by the committee. The form P11 shall state whether the invitation of resolution plan shall be downloaded or obtained from, as a case may be, provide the last date of submission of which shall not be less than 15 days from the date of issue of invitation. The invitation of resolution plan shall detail each step in the process and the manner and the purpose of interaction between the resolution professional and the resolution applicant, and include the basis of evaluation, so evaluation metrics, basis of considering a resolution plan significantly better than, so there should be any percentage or absolute term, the tick size, the manner of approving the resolution plan. We have already discussed these in our illustrations. Now clause C says that it shall not require any non-refundable deposit from the resolution applicant. So similar to CIRP also, they can ask for the refundable security deposit but cannot ask for non-refundable security deposit from the resolution applicants. The resolution professional shall require the resolution applicant, in case its resolution plan is approved under section 54K subsection 13, to provide performance security within the time specified therein. So he may require the performance security. RP may ask the resolution applicant to provide the performance security within the given time, and shall forfeit if the resolution applicant of such plan after its approval by the adjudicating fails to implement or contribute to the failure of implementation of that plan. So this is to safeguard. Friends, why this clause is there, clause C is there, so that the resolution applicant or COC may not start earning by asking for non-fundable deposit in case there are 100 resolution applicants. So if they ask for 1 lakh each, so they will have 1 CR. So that should not be done. That is why they have restricted to non-refundable security deposit. Now resolution professional shall require the resolution applicant in case the resolution plan is approved. So once the plan is approved, he may require the resolution applicant to provide the performance security. Maybe in case after the resolution plan is approved by the adjudicating authority, the applicant says, no, I am not interested, now you look for another plan. So he will ask for the performance security, say for example deposit 50% or 25% of the amount in a separate bank account. And in case the applicant fails to implement the resolution plans or do not abide by the resolution plan, though the performance security will get forfeited. For the purpose of sub-regulation, performance security shall mean security of such nature, value, duration, source as may be specified in the invitation to the resolution plan and the approval of the committee having regard to the nature. So they will determine, the COC will determine in the meeting the performance security. Performance security may be specified in absolute terms such as the guarantee from a bank for X for Y years, for X amount for Y years, and in relation to one or more variables such. So this has to be determined by the COC in their meeting, what should be the amount of the performance security and what tenure would be for the performance security while approving or before approving, before going to issue the request for resolution plan. Regulation 44 resolution plan. The resolution plan shall provide for the measures as may be necessary for maximization of value of assets. So this is the objective of IBC. So which shall include the following: transfer can be done, transfer of any part of assets to corporate debtor, sale of any part of assets can be done, restructuring, substantial acquisition, cancellation or delisting of any shares, satisfaction or modification of any security interest, cutting or waiving of any breach of terms, reduction in any amount payable to the creditor, extension of any maturity, amendment to the constitutional documents of the corporate debtor, issuance of security, change in the portfolio, technology, or obtaining necessary approvals from central or state government or other authorities. So resolution plan can provide for any of these things. Maybe these may include the amendment to the constitutional documents or further issue of share or any securities or restructuring. Anything can be done. Then friends, moving further with regulation 45, which says the mandatory content of resolution plan. So resolution plan shall include an affidavit that the resolution applicant is eligible under section 29A. Section 29A talks about disqualification. He has to give an affidavit that the applicant is eligible to apply to become a resolution applicant. The statement giving details in the resolution applicant or any of its related parties has failed to implement or contributed to the failure of implementation of resolution plan approved by the adjudicator. So in the past, if either the resolution applicant or any of the related party of the resolution applicant has failed to implement any resolution plan which has been approved by the adjudicating authority, so they have to give them statement that in the past there is no resolution plan which we have failed to implement. An undertaking that every information and record provided in connection with the resolution plan is true and correct, and the discovery of any false information will render the resolution plan ineligible to participate in the resolution process under this code. So they will give a declaration that whatever they have disclosed about themselves are true and correct, and later on if anything get disclosed, so they will become automatically ineligible. Resolution plan shall provide for the term of the plan and the implementation schedule, so that if the corporate debtor has to pay suppose 5 CR to the financial creditor, so when the resolution applicant and how the resolution applicant will make the payment and settle the creditor, so that has to be prepared by the resolution applicant in its resolution plan. So the terms of plan should say the implementation schedule, so payment to the creditor within next so many years or like that. The management and control of the business, who is going to manage and control the business after the acquisition by the resolution applicant. Adequate means for supervising and implementation. Then resolution plan shall demonstrate that it address the cause of default. So what was the cause of default? Non-payment or default by the CD. So it address, obviously it will address, then only the COC will approve the plan. It is feasible and viable, so COC will ensure that the plan is feasible and viable. Applicant will not ensure, because applicant will just propose. COC will have to ensure that the plan is feasible and viable, and later on the adjudicating authority will approve the plan. While approving the plan, they will ensure that the plan is feasible and viable. It has provision for its effective implementation. So again, COC as well as the RP has to check the feasibility, viability, and the provision of the effective implementation of the plan. It has provision for the approval required and the timeline for the same. So there may be approval from the authorities that are required, so that should also provide for within how many days or how many months they will get the approval. Resolution applicant has the capability to implement the resolution plan, so he should have the net worth. So what he is proposing, he should have the ability to pay or settle that. Then sub-regulation 4 says a resolution plan shall include a statement as to how it was dealt with the interest of all the stakeholders, including the financial creditor, operational creditor, and of the corporate debtor. So how he has dealt with the interest of all the stakeholders, he has to provide that. The amount payable to the under the resolution plan to the operational creditor shall be paid in priority over the financial creditor. So resolution plan should also provide that the operational creditor are paid in priority to the financial creditor. To the financial creditor who have the right to vote under subsection 2 of section 21 and did not vote in favor of the rest shall be paid in priority over financial creditor who voted in favor of the plan. So there may be financial creditor who have not voted in favor of the plan, so those financial creditors will have the priority over the other financial creditors who voted in favor of the plan. So in case the plan is approved, the operational creditor will have priority over the financial creditor, and the dissenting financial creditor will have the priority over the financial creditor who have voted in favor of the plan. Then regulation 46 talk about submission of resolution plan. Resolution applicant may submit the resolution plan or plans prepared in accordance with the code or these regulations through electronic means within the time given in the invitation for resolution plan. And resolution plan which does not comply with the provision shall be rejected. That means if the plan is submitted late, it will be rejected. After the due date, it will be rejected. Regulation 47, evaluation of resolution plan. Resolution plan received under regulation 46 which shall comply to the requirement of the code and the regulation shall be evaluated on the basis of evaluation matrix which has been prepared by the committee of creditor in their meeting. The resolution plan which gets the highest score under sub-regulation 1 shall be selected for competition with the base resolution plan. So base resolution plan was received by the CD, and in case base resolution plan is not approved under section 54K4, so the COC asked for the other outsiders plan. So base resolution plan provided by the CD, they are not satisfied, it will compete with the other outsiders plan, and either the plan under section 54K4 or 54K12 will get approved after the competition. Then regulation 48 talks about approval of resolution plan. So sub-regulation 1 says the resolution plan selected under regulation 47 shall be considered by the committee for approval if it is significantly better. We have discussed what is significantly better. If not, then the base resolution plan will be selected. When no resolution plan is received under sub-regulation 46 which comply with the requirement of the code or regulation, that means the outsider regulation plan if do not comply with the requirements of the code, then base resolution plan may be considered by the committee for approval. In the cases other than 1 and 2, the resolution professional shall disclose the score of the resolution plan selected under Regulation 46 and the base resolution plan to the submitter of these resolution plan and invite them to improve their resolution plan in accordance with the sub-regulation 4. So in case the score of base resolution plan is 100 and the other plan, some plan has say 120, 102, some say 103, and significantly better, they have determined that it should be 5%. The RP will say that they will compete among themselves and the minimum tick size is 2% or 2 point, whatever as the case may be. So they will compete among themselves and he will put the scores of all the resolution plan in front of them and they will bid and improve their bids, and whosoever has the highest bid will win the bid. The submitter of the resolution plan under sub-regulation 3 shall have the option to improve the plan. Now he will get the option to improve the plan. Even the base resolution plan can be improved. The submitter of the resolution plan which has a lower score shall have the option to improve its resolution plan by at least a tick size. So tick size we have already approved in the meeting and communicated to the applicants beforehand, and they will, by the minimum tick size, they will improve their resolution plan. Then the submitter of the other resolution plan shall have the option to improve the resolution plan by at least a tick size. So every resolution plan applicant will get the opportunity to improve the score of its plan by a minimum tick size. Then the submitter under clause 1, clause A, shall have the option to improve the resolution plan by a tick size again. So every applicant will get an opportunity to improve by a tick size. Then the submitter under clause B shall have the option to improve the by a tick size, and the process of improvement shall continue till either of the submitter fails to use the option within the time specified in the invitation of the resolution plan. So this process will continue till the time the resolution applicant with the highest score is determined. The process under this shall be completed within a time window of 48 hours. So 48 hours will be given. So all the participants, all the applicants will be called and they will be given 48 hours to bid and bid their score. So whosoever bids the highest score of their its resolution plan will be the winner. The resolution plan having higher score on completion of the process of improvement under the Regulation 4 shall be considered by the committee for approval. So whosoever get the highest bid will be considered by the committee for approval. Then friends, once the bidder with the highest score is determined and the COC has approved, then the RP will approach to the adjudicating authority. So let's talk about Regulation 49 now, application to adjudicating authority, where the resolution plan is approved by the committee. So we have determined the highest bidder in Regulation 48. Now in 49, the highest bidder plan will be approved by the committee obviously, and then the resolution professional shall submit an application along with a compliance certificate. This compliance certificate is a comprehensive form wherein all the details about the process is mentioned. He will submit to the adjudicating authority along with the timelines that the RP has met. The RP shall forthwith send a copy of the order of adjudicating authority approving or rejecting a resolution plan to the participant and the resolution applicant. He will, once the adjudicating authority approve or reject, he will share that with the participant and the applicant. The resolution professional shall within 7 days of the order of adjudicating authority approving the plan intimate each claimant the principle or formula, as the case may be, for payment of debt under such resolution plan. So he will have to again convey that to the creditors, all the creditors including the operational creditor who are not party to the committee of creditor. Where no resolution plan is approved by the committee, so there may be circumstances that no plan is approved by the committee, then RP shall have to file an application in form P13. P13 is for the termination of the process to the adjudicating authority. Moving further friends, chapter 10 Management of affairs of corporate debtor. Regulation 50 talks about the management of affairs. Corporate debtors shall not indulge into any fraudulent activity or may not perform any activity which is prejudicial to the interest of creditor. So, in case this has happened, the RP may report that to the COC and COC may approve, and RP may file an application under section 54J, wherein the adjudicating authority may decide on passing on the control of the corporate debtor to the RP instead of the directors or partners of the LLP. So they have to ensure that they do not act fraudulently. Corporate debtor shall not undertake any of the following action without the approval of the committee. So transaction above a threshold as decided by the committee would be controlling the CD, so they will decide the threshold for the action taken by the directors, or any other matter as decided by the committee and not covered under. So section 28 talks about the activities which RP would be performing under CIRP process, wherein the approval from COC is required. So in this case also, if directors are managing the affairs, they also need approval from the COC. Beyond section 28 also, COC may impose some condition or some restriction on the corporate debtor. The corporate debtor, in consultation with the RP, shall prepare a monthly report and forward it to the members of the committee with the following details. So monthly report is also required, which is to be prepared by the corporate debtor along with the RP, which is to be provided to the COC. Detail of legal proceedings having a material impact on the business, detail of key contracts, any other relevant matter. Resolution professional may call for information relating to the operation of corporate debtor, including payment made. Visit premises, inspect the assets of the corporate debtor, call for information, ask for detail relating to litigation, ask for detail ascertaining the conduct of the corporate debtor. So basically RP would be just supervising, foreseeing that the corporate debtor or its directors or partners are not acting fraudulently and everything is being done in a bona fide manner, and actually the corporate debtor has the intention to resolve its insolvency. In case it is found that they are doing fraudulent activities, application can be filed under section 54J, and all the controls which has been given to the CD will pass on to the RP. Regulation 51 talk about vesting of the management with RP for the purpose of subsection 1 of section 54J. RP shall make an application in form P14. So this is application under section 54J which we have discussed. So in case of non-cooperation or fraudulent activity by the CD, RP can file an application under this section in form P14. So friends, we have concluded with the regulations, and at the end we have the form. Form P1 is the written consent. As you can see here, the written consent of the RP, it is a very simple form. He has to give the number of cases already handled, so declare that he is not disqualified. And form P2 is to be prepared by the CD itself and will be passed on to the RP. So this is the list of creditor which is to be prepared by the CD. So name of the creditor, amount of claim and the percentage of claim. Similarly for financial creditor, operational creditor, related and unrelated, they have to segregate, and other creditors, employee, workmen, etc. Then friends, we have form P3. It is the approval for the RP. RP will get appointment will get approved in this form by COC with a majority of 66%. So this is the table which says the creditors, amount of debt, percentage of debt. So whosoever has given approval for appointment of RP and his fees payable to the RP for performing his duty under 54B, 54F and 54J in case the control vests with him. And then form P4 we have. This is the approval for initiating the pre-PAG insolvency resolution process. This approval is to be given with the COC, again with 66% majority, so that the corporate debtor can approach to NCLT and file the application for initiation of the PPIRP process. Then we have form P5, written consent of authorized representative. This will be applicable in case there is a class of creditor and the RP appoints authorized representative for the class. So in that case we require the written consent from the authorized representative. Then friends, form P6 we have declaration by the directors. So we have read under section 54A that the director have to declare that they will complete the process within 90 days and it is not to defraud the creditors. So in for that case they have to fill in the form and give a declaration to the COC in form P6. Then form P7 we have declaration regarding the existence of avoidance transaction. RP has to frame an opinion for the fraudulent, undervalued, extortionate transactions and he has to file this form with the NCLT. Then friends, we have form P8 which is the report of insolvency professional. He has to give a report that all the provisions of the code are complied with. The CD meets the definition of MSME, the declaration have been provided with, base resolution plan meets the criteria and all. Then friends, we have form P9 is the public announcement of the corporate about the corporate debtor that it has gone to the pre-pack insolvency resolution process. Then friends, form P10 wherein the RP has to update the list of claims for all the secured financial creditor, unsecured and related party, non-related party, whether operational creditor, workmen, employees and all. He has to keep on updating the list of claim as and when the process goes on. So based upon the information he has got in the form P2, the list of all the creditors, he has to keep on updating these claims. Then friends, we have form P11, invitation for resolution plan. So in this case where the base resolution plan could not be approved by the COC, RP will file an advertisement if you look for the outside resolution plan so that the outside bidder can pitch in and they can come up with the. So this is the advertisement basically, and this will have the information memorandum which he has to share, the evaluation metrics, the tick size that which we have discussed, the significantly better plan for that particular criteria. So everything in the advertisement he will issue only the basic information. In case the resolution applicant show his interest, so he will disclose the additional information along with the declaration from them that they will not indulge into any activity or not disclose anything which they have obtained to anybody, and they will not make any undue gain. So this is the form. And then we have form P12 which is compliance certificate. This is a comprehensive form about the corporate debtor process, when it got initiated, appointment of the registered valuer, about the meetings and all. So this is a comprehensive form which is to be submitted by RP to the NCLT. Then friends, we have form P13 which says the application for termination of pre-pack. In case the resolution plans could not be approved, so RP has to file an application for termination of pre-pack insolvency resolution process. This is to be filed by the RP again to the NCLT. Then we have form P14, application for vesting management with the RP. So this form has to be filed again with the by the RP to the adjudicating authority in case the CD is found to be indulging into fraudulent activity. So RP will file this so that the control of the CD will vest with the RP. Friends, we have covered the regulation and its forms. Now I have in front of me the rules which were framed by the central government through a notification dated 9th of April 21, and the powers has been given to central government to make rules for the pre-pack insolvency resolution process, and this is pretty small, and these rules may be called Insolvency Bankruptcy Rules 2021, and they shall come into force on 9th April, and they shall be applicable on this process. And these are the definitions. And filing of applications, now the application to adjudicating authority, a corporate applicant shall make an application for initiating pre-pack insolvency under section 54C in form 1. Form 1 is for filing application to NCLT. NCLT application will be in form 1. Those form P1, P2, P3 are the forms which were in regulation, which are to be filed to again NCLT, but this form is for filing the application to NCLT along with the affidavit, documents and other record referred to in regulations. So that will form the annexure of this form, and along with a fee of 15,000 rupees. So in the CIRP this fees is 20,000. They have reduced it for MSME. However, in case of operational creditor, the fees was just 2,000 rupees. Provided that in case electronic facility is not available, the application can be made in the physical form. So their preference is the application should be in electronic form. In case this is not available, so that then in that case application can also be filed in the physical form. The corporate applicant shall serve a copy of the application to the board by registered post before filing to the adjudicating authority. So before filing an application to the adjudicating authority to NCLT, application has to be filed to the board also. The application shall be filed with the adjudicating authority in accordance with the rules. NCLT rules are there. So these rules specify that the application should be in this form, in this format, and the ideal size, that all are there in this NCLT tribunal rules 2016. Corporate applicant shall inform the adjudicating authority about filing of any winding up petition against the corporate debtor after becoming aware of such filing. So in case any winding up or anything has been filed, so the corporate applicant shall update to the adjudicating authority. So that's all in the rule. We have only a form attached to the rules, and this is the format for filing an application to initiate the pre-pack insolvency. This has the details of corporate debtor, and along with the affidavit and declaration, this application has to be filed with the NCLT. So friends, that's all we have. We have covered the entire pre-pack insolvency, which starts from chapter 3A of IBC, and the regulations and the rules formed thereunder we have covered in entirety. I hope you find this video useful. I would be coming up with the more videos. Till then, stay tuned, take care and have a good day.